Today in Math 7, students were tasked with the responsibility of constructing squares while only using a straight edge and a compass. Throughout our investigations, we practiced two different methods. I'm going to demonstrate method number 1 for you now. In examining line segment AB, we need to go ahead and extend point B further to the right and point A further to the left. To do so, I'm going to go ahead and use my straight edge and to make these extensions. Moving it to the right and also to the left, I'm extending it beyond the points A and to points B. This will assist me in eventually creating the perpendicular line segments that I need to extend up from A and up from B. Now, in each of these lines that I have extended, or line segments that I've extended, the length of them does not necessarily matter. It could be a few centimeters or a few inches, depending on the size that you have available to you. Placing your compass on point A, I'm going to go ahead and extend my compass so it does not quite reach the midpoint, but a little bit less than the midpoint, and I'm going to draw one arc. I'll go ahead and rotate my compass around and go ahead and create my second arc. What I have done at this point is was able to go ahead and create a new line segment between the intersections of the two arcs. Using this line segment, I can now go ahead and extend my compass so it intersects both of the arcs. What I can now do is bisect this new line segment with A at the midpoint. In doing so, I'll create a perpendicular line that will extend upward from point A. Drawing my first arc and then my second arc. From here, I'll reposition my compass onto the second point, rotate my compass around, and draw in my arc at the top and arc at the bottom. Now that I have my two intersecting arcs above positional point A and below it, I can now use my straight edge to go ahead and connect those two intersections. And we want to be careful here to make sure that you are actually using a straight edge to make sure that this does form a perfect 90-degree angle. Now you can go ahead and extend your line segment further up. It does not necessarily matter for the length yet. We'll go ahead and determine the appropriate length for the line segment later on. Now what we did for point A, we're going to go ahead and do for point B also. Placing my compass again on point B, I'm going to reposition my compass. And again, the length does not necessarily matter here, just something that feels comfortable for you. Drawing in your first arc, rotate your compass around, draw in your second arc. From here, we're going to go ahead and bisect this new line segment that we have just constructed, similar to what we did, or exactly the same process of what we did for point A. We're going to go ahead and draw our arc above, extend the arc below, reposition our compass, draw the intersection below, and draw the intersection above. Now at this point, we're able to go ahead and connect our line segments. And if you make any errors at any point in time with your drawings, feel free just to go ahead and and if you have any errors at some point in time, you can just go ahead and erase those or remove those, and we'll just erase them at this point here. Now using my straight edge, I can go ahead and create or connect the two lines, or the intersections of the arcs above and the arcs below. And if yours is slightly off, make sure you're checking with your ruler and reposition to make sure it lines perfectly with that. And also feel free to extend your perpendicular line. Now we have basically the base of line segment AB. We have a left side and we have a right side, but we now need to figure out what is the length of this perpendicular line. To do so, we're going to go ahead and place our compass on point A, extend it out to point B. Now we have the length that will be congruent to the left-hand side as to point AB. Rotating our compass around, we'll go ahead and draw in that arc. Moving our compass to point B, we'll place it in there and draw our second arc. Now what we have been able to go ahead and do is determine the length of line segment of AB being congruent to the new line segment, and also from extending upwards from B2. Using our mark, we can go ahead and place a point on each of those intersections. Using our straight edge, we can now go ahead and draw the top line segment of our square. Now, in order to determine that our line segments are correct and that they do form 90-degree angles, we're going to again use our compass to check. We're going to place it on point A and extend it onto point B. We can tell that the line segment length here should be congruent to each of the other four sides. Moving our compass upward, we can tell that the 2 points are equal distance. Placing it back on point A, I can rotate it around and tell that it is again congruent, and repositioning it to the right side, tell that they are the same length. The last thing we'll want to go ahead and do is measure the diagonals from point A to the diagonal across from it, and from point B to the diagonal across from it also. If the lengths or the diagonals are the same length, we also know that it forms a 90-degree angle. So repositioning it here, we have our original length. I'm going to move my compass to point B, rotate it around, and it should line up with our other diagonal. Now that all the sides are congruent and it forms 90-degree angles and the diagonals have congruent lengths, we can tell that this is in fact a square. So this is again method number 1. If you have any questions about it, feel free to go ahead and stop the video and start over again and re-watch it as many times as necessary. When you feel comfortable with method number 1, let's continue on to method number 2. Looking at method number 2, it's a similar approach to it in that we will only be using a compass and a straight edge. We're looking at line segment AB, and we want to again construct a square. We're going to go ahead and place our compass on point A and extend it out to point B. And what we're going to do is bisect line segment AB. I'm going to go ahead and draw a very large sweeping arc, and I'm going to go ahead and move my compass onto point B and also draw another large arc. What I'm being careful to remember here is that I want my arcs to extend past where I believe a 90-degree angle for point A would be, and for point B, because ultimately we're going to go ahead and form a square somewhere up in this space. These arcs will become important in the next several steps. Now that I've gone ahead and created my intersecting arcs, I'm going to go ahead and draw or use my straight edge to go ahead and connect those arcs. Again, I want to make sure I'm as exact as possible, or as exact as I can be, with those intersections. From here now, I can tell that I've created a perpendicular line segment up from line segment AB. This is only the midpoint, does not form any of the sides of the square, but it will become important in just a few moments. Now that I've gone ahead and created these arcs, I'm going to go ahead and again take my measurements. Extending from point A to point B, I'm again going to go ahead and use this as a reference for later on. And I'm going to place this now at the midpoint of the intersections, rotate my compass around, and draw in a new arc. The intersection of the bisector of this line segment and of my arc tells me this is the exact top of my square, or the height of the square. Moving my compass out of the way, I'll go ahead and create that dot. This is our intersection that we'll have at the top of our square. All this tells me is the height of my square. It is not the positional space of my left side or my right side, which we'll find will be eventually over here somewhere. Now using my compass, I'm going to place it on the midpoint, or the bisect, and move this onto, again, positional space B. Using my compass now, I'm going to extend it back up towards the top, put it on that intersection, and I'm going to go ahead and draw in a new arc. I'm going to also then extend from over here, from the midpoint, move it over into point A, which is the same space, or the same distance. I'll place my compass again on that midpoint intersection and draw in another arc. What I've now done at this point is was able to go ahead and identify where the midpoint is of my line segment and to find the height of my square. From the intersection of the midpoint and the height, I can then extend outwards to the right to find the top right corner of my square and the top left corner of my square. Using now a straight edge, I'm going to go ahead and connect those spots. So from point A, I'm going to extend upwards, and from point B, I'm going to extend upwards. Then I'm going to use my compass, or my straight edge, and going ahead and connect those going across. Now, from this spot, what I can do is go ahead and use my compass to again double check my work. Now, slightly I was off right there, just slightly, and that was as a result of placing my compass just a millimeter or so off from the exact spot. When I'm looking at these dots that I have on here, you have to be very careful where you're placing the tip of the compass. If I'm just a millimeter to the left or just to the millimeter of the right, you may see some slight human error in your construction. But this is where double checking our work comes into play. Placing my compass on point A, just as we did in method 1, I'm going to extend out to point B. I'm going to rotate my compass around and see if the length of the left side is the same as the length of the right hand side. And again, looking at this, I can tell that they are the same. Moving my compass back to point A, I'm rotating down, and I'll go ahead and check the top portion of my square, and I can tell that the top of my square is also congruent to line segment AB. Now the last part, I want to go ahead and check the lengths of the diagonals. Extending them out, I can tell that the length here of A, or the diagonal from A to its diagonal, is this measurement. I'm going to do the same for point B, placing it there and rotating around, and we can see that the measurement is the same. Now again, depending on the compass that you're using and the slight human errors, you have to be careful where you're placing the tip of your compass. If you're creating very large circles, as I have done here, it creates the possibility of more human error because, just again as I mentioned, a slight variation to the left or to the right will alter your arcs slightly. But for the purposes of our class, slight errors of that sort, as long as the measurements match up later on, would be sufficient for our use for this course. Feel free to again review this this video several times if you need to, or just the sections of methods number 1 or methods number 2 in order to be able to complete your constructions.